Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your consciousness transformation ascension guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. This is a great topic because we don't even realize how prevalent it is in our lives, right? So hold on, I'm just pulling up my comments here. If I can see them. Okay. Well. All right. They've changed stuff. They keep on changing stuff. Anyway, so it's interesting. We are so used to compartmentalization, right, in our lives and with ourselves that we don't even realize we do it most of the time. And we don't realize that by doing it, we are limiting ourselves and what we do and how we present ourselves in our authenticity. And if authenticity is truly our goal, well, then we can't be authentic if we're continuing to limit, like hide parts of ourselves from the world. So, and what does that come from? Well, this it's funny because I was scrolling through Instagram, and there was somebody who had talked about how they had for a long time segregated, like they had two businesses. One that was a dance business, it's like a sacred dance business, and the other one was a sort of a sex coaching business. And she said, she kept this strong, good morning, Gloria. She kept this strong, like she had for a long time kept this strong wall between both. And she said it just felt harder and harder. And, because she was always afraid, like, the people who just came from for dance, or intimidated or not interested or put off by the sexuality part. And people who are in the sexuality were not necessarily into the dance thing. So she would just keep it separate, or tried to. It started to blend together. And it got me to thinking, we do that all the time, right? We put parts of ourselves out there, and it might not be that blatant, but we also hide parts of ourselves because of what we think people are going to judge, how we think they're going to judge us, right? So that's really the big topic, which is it's time for us to get past that. It's time for us to get past the being afraid of what people are going to think of us, because we then limit ourselves just in that initial concept, in that initial thought. Now, yes, have we been brought up? Have we been brought up in a culture that is very much a keeping up with the Joneses culture? Absolutely. Very much about what other people think of you and other people think of your choices. But it's funny that I talk to a lot of people about this, about being their authentic selves, about not apologizing for who they are. And we talk it a great game. We talk about wholeness and oneness. And then it's so prevalent in the spiritual community that, it's like, oh, well, if I'm a spiritual like presence or somebody in, remembrance, then I'm not allowed to ever be angry. I'm not ever allowed to have a shadow side or, have problems. And I must hide those from the world, right? Or if I'm an instructor in this, like how many people I've talked to that say, well, how can I do this? How can I do work with people, and energy work and consciousness work if I have a ton of problems myself? And I'm like, because we're all going through it. We're all in separation. That's all the illusion that we're living through. But what happens is, and there was somebody who literally walked away from being a friend of mine because I sort of called them out on it in a loving way. It wasn't like I was telling them they were terrible because of it, but I think they took it that way years ago, because I said, because they were very much stuck in the teacher mode of, oh, my students have to like put me on a pedestal and they have to love me and adore me, and that's what makes me tick. And I'm like, being there to teach, being there to be an example or a leader, to me, and my understanding is being who you are and showing everybody that, yeah, I'm going through stuff too. I'm doing stuff too. I have a variety of interests too that aren't considered, in the category of, high spirituality. But this individual was like, oh, well, I can't do this because I can't have people see me this way. And, they wanted to take a class from me, but they wanted these parameters in place basically so they could keep themselves separate in a oneness class, which was ironic, right? And I was like, no, that you take it as it's offered or you don't take it. And that really ended the relationship because it's something that we all do though. I'm not pointing this individual out. I'm just saying I've had it happen. I've done it myself. I do it myself. We all do it. We all do it. We show one face to our family and we show another face to the public. I know plenty of people in the spiritual community who present themselves in one fashion, and then their private lives are sort of a mess and they're still working stuff out, but they never show that. And everybody thinks that they're, perfect and incredible and everything. And we are perfect and incredible, but they feel like that they're like on this pedestal and they're like, oh, well, I can never be like that person because look at what I'm going through. And if we don't show through all of that, then we will never get to that place of allowing our authenticity. So Laurel says, interesting topic. Lately, I've been looking at being clear in communications and how many people don't like that. We have this facade of being nice means we don't address tough discussions, and I believe we're nice and loving if we do. Well, and that's the whole thing. What I always tell people all the time is, yes, absolutely, speak authentically and do it, but do it from a self-responsible, love-based place. And that doesn't mean that you always have to be nice. It just means that you do it from a self-responsible, love-based place. So you say things like, when this happens, I feel this way, right? Yeah, that's the basis for like approaching stuff like that when you're having interactions with people. Or I see it this way, or I understand it this way. When you say things like that, you're taking responsibility for how you understand it, how you see things, and you are not imposing it on other people. So here's the thing, because that's the practice we're used to doing, is we're used to imposing things on other people, implying that my judgment is right and your judgment is wrong, if it doesn't agree. So it's coming to that place of coming to a place of understanding that everybody's journey is their own. I talked about that 2 weeks ago, honoring everybody's journey. And that, again, like I was talking about 2 weeks ago, in honoring everybody's journey is not always interceding or intervening or stepping in to help, because guidance is that they need to do this to get on with their journey. And sometimes that's the most loving thing to do, right? So on that topic, Laurel, yeah, it's all interrelated in that way, because we're so afraid of how people will judge us. And it's funny because just as I said that, a dream that I had last night came to me before I even knew, because I woke up this morning at like 5:30 a.m. and that was the topic sitting there. But in the dream last night, I had talking about somebody, and I kept on saying, well, why aren't you sharing this about yourself? And why aren't you sharing that? And they're like, oh, well, these people won't like me. These people won't like me. And I was like, who cares? Because then they're not really your tribe. And it doesn't matter if they like you. Like, all that matters is that you love yourself at the end of the day. And we've put so much on the opposite. We've put so much weight on how other people feel about us that we hide parts of ourselves. I mean, we do it in spousal relationships. We do it on our families. How many people do you know, including ourselves, often act differently when we're around like our core, nuclear family that we grew up with versus extended family versus friends versus the public. We tend to categorize and compartmentalize and think, I have to be this kind of person with these people so this happens, right? That's what we think. And we don't even think this consciously. So then what happens ultimately is we hide parts of ourselves constantly. I have become much more forthright this year about talking about stuff that, I'm going through, because we're all doing it. And it doesn't make me any less of a spiritual leader. It doesn't make anybody who's not doing it any more of one. It is simply, this is the reality, because I got sort of tired of hearing people say, I can't do it. I can't do it the way you do it. I can't do it like, well, I'm not you and da-da-da. And it's like, right, you're not, except you can do it the way I do it, and even better. Because you're just not seeing that I'm going through stuff every day, and I'm dealing with human stuff and resolution of stuff and some pretty big stuff in my life, which is fine. It's just that I don't get dramatic about it in general. Some days I do. Sometimes I do, and I allow that as well. But I felt like it's been really important to sort of get out there and start talking about this stuff, because many don't realize that we are doing this. And the more we do this, the more we're perpetuating separation, exclusion, and ego-based behavior. because we're still then saying, well, I have to do this so that other people think I'm a good mom. I have to do this so other people think I'm a good wife, or I have to do this because my spouse thinks I'm a good spouse. Or I have to do this so my spouse will love me. What if we just did stuff because we love ourselves and then allow people to love us for who we are? And if they don't, then let them move on. And that includes in business, because say, well, I need to have clients. You do need to have clients, but how much better? I've been doing this for almost 11 years now professionally. And I can tell you, like, the clients that have come back and come back and come back are those who we align in our authenticity, and who, do the work, who are self-motivated and just need some help and tweaking and things like that. But also that also respect that I'm honest in that authenticity, and I expect the same from them. And I welcome the same from them. And I appreciate them for who they are, right? Whether we have very different viewpoints, we have very different, like there are some clients there are times that they come in and I'm thinking, wow, we are so different in perspective. It's interesting that they still come back, like even if it's 6 months or a year or 2 years. And I think, but that's part of the thing, is that because we respect each other and honor each other's journeys, we always get nuggets from what we have to say with each other. Laurel says, here's another fun one. What if I can make money off or with someone that I can't be myself with and I have to dance around? Yeah, and a lot of money. Yeah, then what if you could make a lot of money without having to do that? Right? I obviously know the answer to this one. It's come up just the past few days. Then there's other opportunities where that allows you that authenticity. I mean, like we think about that and we get so afraid of things like losing our marriage, or losing our partner or best friend or whatever. But is it truly a true connection if you can't be who you really are? And there will always be kinks in the connection if you are hiding a part of yourself or limiting a part of yourself. Like I know a lot of people who are, into the spirituality and they can't talk to their spouse about it. Well, that's a challenge, because then they'll limit themselves and who they are in front of their spouse as they go. Yes, well, might they get judged? They might, but judgment has nothing to do with you. Judgment has to do with where the individual is. I always say, it's none of your business what other people think of you. It just matters. You just have to realize that's where they are, right? All that matters is where you are with yourself. And that's one of the hardest, it seems to be one of the most challenging mountains for us to get over. I mean, the reality is we have it so ingrained in us to want people to like us, to want people to love us, because it makes us feel good when people think or say things that are good about us. So then we hide parts of ourselves that we believe are limited, right? So, and I've been seeing this a lot lately. And I've been looking at that within myself, like what parts of myself do I still keep hidden or keep separate, And, my husband's going through the same thing. And most people that I know are going through the same thing. And it's a shift into an authenticity that we are unaccustomed to having. And so we have this hesitation. It feels uncomfortable. We get knots in our stomach. We feel, irritated and triggered. And usually that's because underneath it, we have these ideas of, oh, they might not like me. I might not. It might end this relationship. And the thing is, and what I say to people is, when you think that, it's like, okay, well, then maybe it's played its part, but then maybe it'll get even better. Maybe the relationship won't end, but it'll actually get better, because when you hold that vibration of authenticity and saying, this is who I am unapologetically, 100%, all the time, because it's funny, I do the same thing. I don't even realize it, like, because I have such a variety of different, parts of my life, that I realized that over the years, I sometimes really minimize what I do for a living. and just sort of blow it off because I don't feel like having to explain it. I don't feel like, what other people might think of it. I don't know where they stand. And it's not even like big, it's very, very subtle. But I started hearing myself when somebody asked, well, what do you do? And I was getting triggered because my husband hasn't traditionally talked much about what I do to other people. And the reason I realized I'm so triggered by it is because I do the same thing. I realized that recently. And so I'm like, well, dang, now I have to really reset my explanations and reset the way I stand. But then that turns the mirror back to myself to say, so what am I afraid of? What is that? What is it important for me to say? Gloria says, is it truly a true connection if it's a friend who seems to most of the time want to have it their way? Sadly, I let go of that friendship for now or maybe forever because it doesn't work for me. It seems selfish to that person. Well, yeah, because then we do that all the time. But we also do things. Here's the other part, though. We do things because we think somebody else wants it without actually having them ever say it. That's like a big misnomer in relationships, all kinds of relationships. But yeah, and you can say, okay, well, I honor that with you, but I'm gonna go do my own thing. I honor that you want to do that. I'm gonna now. Is there, I think Sarah and I talked about this on Ascended World on one of our episodes over on Ascended World, but I'm not quite sure if this was just a conversation we had or not. Oh my, I just totally lost it. What was that point? No, I lost it because I was talking and then it flew out of my head just as fast as it flew in. Oh well, okay, it'll come back if I need to use it. But when we so that's the whole thing is, so we're so afraid of all of that. We're so afraid of losing people. We're so afraid of being alone and being abandoned and betrayed and all that kind of stuff that we hold parts of ourselves back so people will like us more, so people will value us more. And the true connections start coming when you really just allow yourself to be who you are. And so we have certain topics that are standard, right? Number one is our dark side, right? Especially when we get into spirituality, all we want to talk about is how much, I love it's everybody walks around talking about, oh, like this person told me how much light I have, and oh, this person couldn't stop looking at me because of how much light I have, or you have so much light. And I'm like, you have just as much. The more light we have, the more darkness we have, because that's how we exist in duality, right? So we're yin yang. That's part of what the creation was when we created duality. So we only talk about, we don't walk around saying, oh my gosh, what a darkness you have. That's so beautiful and fabulous. And that sounds ridiculous, right? Because we're so trained to say it's not. And, Sarah and I are exploring that this month on our Adventures in Wonderland course in the Shadow, which is probably one of the most powerful things that I've done, because it's great to look at the two sides of everything. We talked about that on Monday. But anyway, but the thing is, we hide those things because we consider them our shadows. When we have an anger, we have some left. So even if we have sickness, we hold that back. We have pain, we hold that back. Sometimes we use it as a tool for attention. Sometimes we are afraid to say we're healthy and happy because it doesn't fit into society's norm. Doesn't that sound bizarre? But think about it. Think about sitting in a group of people who are talking about all of their ailments or all of their problems, and things are going great for you. Do you say something, or do you find some little thing to pick on to say, oh my God, I know what you're talking about because of this, instead of just saying, hey, you know what? 99% of it's all great. And and that happens because, it happens with me because of things like, my health. And I've done so much work with my health and my physicality over the years. And I've made the agreement with my expanded self to get messages before we get there, before we get to a physical manifestation of a message. And so I don't have any health issues. I'm happily healthy. And so when I'm sitting in a group, people are just talking about, oh, this and this and this and this, this ailment or this injury and whatever, the ego starts to pull you toward, oh, well, let me find something from the past or something. Oh, yeah, well, one time I had this because this way we feel like we can connect in that human condition, right? Instead of just saying, no, and I've done that. And it's really interesting because it's interesting to see how people react. And, I've done that with my mother, right? An elderly tend to get into that groove of just talking about what's wrong, right? And versus what's right and what to be grateful for and thankful for in every day. But one time I was out with my mother while she was walking her dog, and we were just walking around where she lived, and this was years ago, like probably like 7 or 8 years ago. And we ran into a friend of hers, and they started talking, and right away they're talking about this ailment and that ailment, and oh, this has been bothering me. Oh, have you been? Oh, well, da da da, and they're talking back and forth, and I just wasn't contributing to the conversation. And finally, my mother, introduced me, and she's like, "Well, yeah, she doesn't understand any of this because she just doesn't ever get sick." And I was like, "Right." But it was almost said like it was like a negative thing, right? But that's what we do. That's what we do collectively. When we decide collectively, oh, this is the topic that makes us connect, then we feel bad if we don't have that connection, because when we feel bad that we're disconnected, we feel like we're not part of the group, part of the group and included and all that kind of stuff. So it's more of a challenge to stand out by just being in your truth, to say, yeah, we don't talk about, our spirituality because we're afraid people are going to be offended. We don't talk about our understandings in politics because, oh my goodness, that causes, World War III right now. And we don't talk about things like sexuality, which is something I'm going to start talking a lot more about because, look, I did a couple of weeks on that, and I had a lot of responses that were great. I had people that came up to me in other parts of my life that I didn't even know were watching this podcast or watching or listening, and came up to me and sort of said, "Oh my goodness, I loved that topic on sexuality that you covered because it makes so much sense. Yeah, you're right. We do still have so much shame around that, and da, 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 and we're not, we hide it and all that kind of stuff." And I'm like, yeah, and it's time to really start talking about it because it is a huge part of our spirituality that we ignore and think that is not unimportant, and yet is another partner of remembrance in such a huge way. So, and how does it have to be? Well, let's even look into that. Like, how do we have to be spirit? How do we have to be sexual? We have to call it tantra. We have to call it this. What about kink? What about BDSM? It's all part of the same thing. And if we do it in a conscious manner, it doesn't matter. If we do it in an unconscious manner, it doesn't matter. If that's our choice. But it's all saying, you know what? I am this. And it's not saying I'm putting anything in your face or saying that you are not like I'm better than you because of this, or you have to agree with me, because that's what makes people uncomfortable. But if you just say, well, yeah, this is who I am. Sure. Yep. And yep, I do this. Yep, I understand this. Yep, I believe this. Yes. Yep, I like it. Yes. Oh, here's another one. Yes, I am an omnivore. Yes, I'm a vegetarian. Yes, I'm a vegan. Yes, I'm a pescatarian. I mean, that's the kind, like, all these things are controversial because we judge people for being right or wrong on different things in their lives. Yeah. I mean, and we can talk sexuality, but I mean, even look at the LGBTQ plus community, right? And all of that, and how many are in judgment of that. And all of it has to do with, we keep things inside. And, I've had conversations where, people just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, right? But what we tend to do when we don't know something or we don't understand it is then we judge it or we fear it. So then that brings on judgment, and then it brings on more separation. But the more we are open and honest and comfortable with who we are, our spirituality, our sexuality, our dark side, our, what else? Our pain, our happiness, the more we're actually fluid and open about all of that and allow it to flow all together, the more people see us as the full divine holographic self that we are. And so it sounds really easy when we talk about it. Oh yeah, yeah, we can do that. We can be, we talk about the authentic self. We talk about, the oneness and wholeness. And it's like, well, we can feel comfortable. Like it was funny because years ago, I do retreats every year, and usually I do at least one in Mount Shasta. Not this year, but next year. And I love going to Mount Shasta, California, because it is such a mecca of just blatant spirituality. And yeah, there's a lot in there, and there's still judgment and cliques and stuff like that there. But in general, everybody is very comfortable talking about stuff that isn't talked about in normal terms, right? And I always laugh because I go there and it's like, oh, it's like this breath of fresh air of like, oh, I get to be exactly who I want to be, or not who I want to be. I get to be exactly who I am, and what goes on in my mind that I hold back because I just will be like, oh, hey, like go to the gas station and talking to the person at the counter, like, how's it going? Oh, great. The energy's a little wiggy today. Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, like, and stuff like that. And then I'm like, oh, I just feel so at home. And then I asked myself, why do I not just be that way all the time? And I think it's because we want other people to be the same way to match us. And we sort of feel sometimes it's like a strain if they don't. But I feel like if we hold that vibration long enough, if we hold it in an authentic way, then eventually we just attract everyone who is in that same vibration, right? So then we might lose people. We might have people judge us. We might have people go away. We might have clients go away, or family go away, or loved ones go away. But then we can attract, what we do then is open the door to attract those who are at the vibration of accepting that authenticity, um, as it is, no matter what. And this includes another thing, is there's the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Or those people of this income bracket aren't supposed to do this. Or, that's somebody who is at a different, in like a lower income bracket than me. I wouldn't act that way. Or I can't act that way in public. Or I can't dress this way in public. These are all these things that we hold back our authenticity with. So, Sarah, all I got is I think your message got cut off. Um, so that's the thing to look at this week. Oh yeah, one of my favorite phrases is teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. So the more we honor our true selves, the more they'll honor your true self. Exactly. So when you walk in and you're just unapologetic about who you are and you're okay with it, um, even if you have a whole group of people around you, my husband and I were just talking this morning about a community that we're a part of, and it's like, they might have an event, and we go to the event, and it's like, well, we don't agree we just aren't in the same place, and some of the people, whatever, doing certain things, and he's like, well, if we're going to be authentic, like, why would we do what they did just because they're doing it? And I'm like, you're right, because I say that all the time. So, and that's showing up for yourself. That's showing up for yourself. And speaking in a place and being in a place of authenticity. And if we commit to that, that's the thing, is to always ask ourselves, can I be in this? Can I do this and be authentically me? Um, yeah, this is the opposite of, I think I had one of these, I don't know, within the last couple months, about sacrifice and not doing sacrifice anymore because it doesn't do anything for us except limits us and delays our authenticity and delays our journey of completion and remembrance, in many ways. So it's really the opposite of that, saying, yeah, nope. It's saying I can be who I am. And by the way, when I'm allowing myself to be who I am, and I do it from a place of self-love and self-responsibility, then all I can do is let you be who you are. And what a gift and a blessing that is for all of us if we can do that with each other. Because then we truly see the colors of the rainbow and we say, that's pretty cool. I love talking with people who have very different points of view from me, as long as they're not in that contentious place of, well, you're wrong, because then, it's like you have to sit there and check with the ego the whole time, like, okay, I'm not going to get in defensive mode. I'm not going to get in defensive mode. But I love sitting and having conversations with people who have just very different perspectives, very different backgrounds, very different experiences, because it always has a nugget. There's always a nugget for me, and there's always a nugget for them if we're open to listening to each other and where they stand authentically. And that to me is like a library of interest, of interesting information and diversity, and looking at this whole holographic symphony that we've created to exist here in this space of duality and density the way we've set it up. And so I feel like we start seeing the symphony better when we do that, because then we can truly honor our differences. Instead of like thinking that we have to be the same, we actually honor ourselves for our individuality and each other. So that's the home play for this week. Go and like look in the mirror of where you are separating parts of your spirituality, your sexuality, your parts of any of your shadow, anger, stuff like that. And I'm not saying to take it out on people. I'm saying to be able to stand in that and say, yeah, I'm angry. I mean, and I find that so much more free to say I'm angry about something or I'm sad about something. And I'm not saying you're making me sad. I'm saying I'm sad about something. I'm angry about something. I am just processing through something. I'm owning it, but I'm not hiding it. And that is the difference. Because it's like, oh, we say, oh, well, I don't want people to bug me or whatever. And it's like, you know what? But then you can just say, thank you, I'm fine. Just let me have my space. That's being honest too, right? So this is changing the way we interact. So look at in your life where you are holding pieces of yourself separate in compartments that might be causing you trouble or limitations or perpetuating situations or relationships or problems that you might not have if you just allowed things to come together into a big alphabet soup kind of thing of who you are. And how much freer that would become instead of, because a lot of times we cause problems in our reality by doing that, by holding these parts of ourselves separate and compartmentalize, because then it's almost like a lie in many cases, because we're lying about who we are by holding off by not talking about that part of ourselves or not allowing that part of ourselves into the conversation because of being afraid of somebody else's judgment. So in a way we're lying, and that's, manipulating somebody into thinking that you're somebody you're not, right? Right? Lying, manipulation, lack of authenticity, separation. And if we're going to resolve all this, it's like, look at where you're doing that. And I'm not saying that with any judgment. I'm just saying that these are words we don't like to use about ourselves, but it's truth of what we do. So look at where we're doing that with others in our lives, with those who we love, with those who, because if we truly love each other, and we just accept who we are, it is what it is. And if we can be self-responsible about it, that makes such a huge difference in terms of how we communicate in that very strong, authentic fashion without making it a trigger to somebody else. And I'm not saying to point it out to other people, because it's not like, and it's also not to go out of your way to trigger somebody. It is simply allow yourself to be you and know that people are going to get triggered. Reason people get triggered by you being authentic from even from a place of self-responsibility and love, which I have learned thousandfold, right, is that there's something within them that they don't allow to be authentic. So when you're being authentic and you do it from that place, right, and without projecting or using arrows and putting it on other people and just taking ownership of it, if they're not doing that within themselves, it's going to trigger them where in the part, and they're going to be like, well, what kind of nerve do they have? And can you believe that? And da-da. And when we judge what people do, then there's something inside of us that, is hiding a part of ourselves that's that we're afraid other people are going to judge. That's how it works in duality in the mirror. So look at that within your life and say, where am I doing that within myself? Like, where am I saying, oh, I have to do this because I have this kind of income? Or people would think, whatever, if I went out to the store and, ripped up jeans or paint covered shorts or whatever, even if I'm just running the store, and think like just even little things like that. Where am I not sharing a part of myself in a relationship because I think the other person won't like me and will go away if I do? Where will my business change if I allow these parts of myself that I've kept separate to come in together and come into play? Why have I kept that separate? And what am I afraid of? And okay, well, yeah, I have an established business. You can say I have an established business and all this stuff, and people might go away. But then think of how easy it becomes when it's just authentic, and you don't have to work at hiding stuff or compartmentalizing it and separating it out, and just say, yep, I'm just going to allow it to be what it is. So look at that this week and, commit yourself to shifting that and having clarity on how to do that from a self-responsible and loving kind of place. And then just take baby steps, commit like one thing at a time. Take a deep breath. And the hardest part is starting. When you do it in little bits and you realize, okay, well that did okay. That did okay. All right, the person's still here, or the situation's still here, or the situation did fall apart and it changed, but now look, it's even better. Like there's so many of those kind of things. So start doing it with baby steps, because the closer we get to our authentic selves, the more we get back to oneness and wholeness, and the faster we transform into what we're doing next. So on that, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a good one.